Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast. This is a show where we aim to educate, inspire and entertain through real life stories and interviews from people in the Scottish property community.
As always, thanks for listening and give us a follow on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to join us at our monthly networking events on the first Wednesday of every month. Tickets are available on our website. So without further ado, we'll just cut straight into this week's podcast. Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast, Noreen Preston. Thank you so much. We've just had a 5-minute discussion about what Noreen's name should be. If anybody's friends with Noreen on Facebook, she goes by 3 different names.
Just 2, Nick. Exactly.
So, listen, Noreen, we've had the pleasure of having you along at the Glasgow Scottish Property Podcast networking event, where you did a great presentation to an audience of, I think we had about 60 people that night. But for the 3,000 other people that listen to this podcast,
including me, I want to
exactly, enlighten us about Noreen Preston, what you do and where you've come from. How did you get involved in property?
Righty, okay, where shall I start? So I guess I've always been a bit obsessed by property. I just loved houses, even when I was a wee girl. My mum used to give me into trouble because she'd say, why do you ask to go to the toilet in everybody's house? And I think I was just nosy and I loved looking at people's houses. And I've always, I suppose when I was 12, 14, 15, I was a kind of unofficial sourcer. People would say, oh, my grand's looking for a bungalow in Kings Park. And I'd say, oh, there's a red sandstone bungalow for sale. And I don't know why. I've just always loved property and I just always took an active interest in it. Then when we got married, I made a fantastic career decision to become an actress, which, let's say, wasn't the most lucrative career. So we were a bit skint and decided to repossession derelict properties as our home and live in them, flip them on, do them up as we lived in them. So we did that a few times and it got more and more derelict as we bought them. So we ended up buying a 100-year-old Victorian house that was completely derelict when I was 8 months pregnant with my 4th child, which was a joy, and did it up. I mean, I had to rip it right back to the bricks. It had everything. I mean, it had new roof, new windows, dry rot, rise and damp, wet rot, everything, kitchens, bathrooms, absolutely everything, knocked down walls, did everything. And my brother lovingly referred to it as the orphanage that we lived in because it was so hellish. But it was a fabulous thing for us to do. And obviously we realised values in properties as we, lived in them and refurbished them and flipped them on.
What sort of year was that then?
So that was 2003.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the year of
big learning.
14% interest rates,
right.
90% mortgages.
Was that a big, obviously, learning experience, like you say, because you were literally ripping it back to the bare walls and stuff like that?
And, kind of working out prices on the back of a fag packet type thing.
I was waiting to say, how did you do your due diligence back then without a clue, I suppose?
Went to view it, saw it was for sale. I did the opposite as well because at the time everybody was moving out of Glasgow into East Renfrewshire because the schools were better, council tax was cheaper, blah blah. I'm the only mug with 4 kids that moved out of East Renfrewshire back into Glasgow. But anyway, saw the house for sale, absolutely thought I'd love that house. There's no way we could afford that house at market value. May have set my alarm clock for 3 o'clock in the morning, got up and stolen the for sale sign, thrown it over my back wall so nobody else.
Good
saw
job.
it.
I've done that a few times as well. Yeah.
And took a builder friend to see it with us. Went to see it. I thought, oh, holy moly, big project. Took a builder pal to see it with us, and he basically said, yeah, it's a big challenge, but if you're up for it.
Was this the family home then, eventually?
Oh, yeah, we're still in it.
Right, okay.
So all my kids were brought up in that house, yeah.
That's cool.
We would actually love to sell it at some point, but and we've got a big massive garage out the back, which now kids call parties gaffs, so it's known as the gaffage, and it's been house to rather a lot of parties over the years.
So that's sort of fueled your interest in property development, and you enjoyed that process of transforming a place.
Yeah.
And then what did that roll on to next then?
So then my family had a furniture business, and we went into a joint venture with a factory in China and a factory in Malaysia and started manufacturing and importing office furniture back in the 90s. So we had a requirement to hold a big stock holding. So my father's business spent a lot of money renting a warehouse space out in Shield Hall, and this building in Kinning Park came up for sale around about 1990, and my dad took a punt on it and thought, right, if I buy that, we use it as our own warehouse obviously for storage, and rent out the rest.
We're going to talk about that in some detail in the commercial stuff later on.
So I suppose I got a bit involved in commercial property at that time, although I didn't really know I was involved in commercial property. It was just one of those things that we looked after the property, we rented it out to tenants, we collected a service charge, we spent the service charge on maintaining the building, we dealt with rates, vacancies and utilities and all the joys of commercial property. So yeah.
But you've obviously done some buy-to-let as well. You were telling us about, the networking event as well. So how does that look in terms of building a portfolio and things?
So maybe about 5 years ago, I thought, we're comfortable. We both have all right salaries. We are doing all right in life. But what happens? Where do you get the big sums? Like, what if, you needed to find £10,000 to... My mum had a stroke actually in Australia, and we'd to dash out to Australia, and I suddenly thought, oh God, I didn't intend to spend an extra few grand this month or whatever. And I thought, where do people find this buffer? Where is this buffer of money? What if you have to pay for a wedding next year? What if you have to pay for, big life events or whatever? So I thought we need to start generating some more sources of income, some other streams of revenue type thing. And having always been interested in property and having always had a wee bit of a hand in property anyway, I thought, I wonder what this would look like if we span it out and started a buy-to-let portfolio or a few flips or whatever. So yeah, about 5 years ago we started investing in buy-to-lets and built ourselves a wee buy-to-let portfolio, which has gone really well for us so far.
In Glasgow?
Mostly Glasgow. So in Glasgow, South Lanarkshire. Then as it was becoming a bit harder to find deals in Glasgow, started buying in Aberdeen. Sorry, Stephen, I know.
We were just talking about this in our market update. Aberdeen's actually... prices are kind of like on the up nearly.
Or levelling.
Levelling.
So it's not all doom and gloom in Aberdeen. I'm actually considering it myself now.
We've seen that for the last 2 years, isn't it?
The 12th time. Aye.
So get some in Aberdeen.
What kind of stuff did you go for in the buy-to-let portfolio? Just
mostly actually ex-local authority, 3-bedroom apartments. Or houses, mostly ex-local authority, a couple of better calibre of properties as well, but generally safe, affordable, 3-bedroomed family houses.
Do you self-manage them or do you put them to
mostly not. No, I've got a couple of self-managed, but mostly through letting agents. So it's very hands-off.
And did you get involved in doing any development stuff in terms of flips or anything like that? Or was it all just solely buy-to-let?
Not recently. We've not done any flips. I just thought flips, I know you've got fantastic experience with flips, Stephen, and obviously it's all about knowing your market and knowing your areas and done up values and everything. Just over the last few years, we just wanted to hold, increase the cash flow, but also increase the asset values,
And what sort of time frame have you kind of built up that buy-to-let portfolio then? When did you sort of start?
Since 2018, end of 2018 we started, so just about 4 years.
Aye. And is that you kind of like stopped on the buy-to-let front just now? Or?
No, I haven't really focused on it this year, on purchasing much this year, just because I wanted my focus to be on commercial this year. So we're spending a lot of time and a lot of effort in the commercial business with a view to really increasing the value and the calibre of tenants there to increase the overall value of the asset. So that's my focus for the next year or two. I'm still buying stuff on the side, but I'm not spending any great focus on my buy-to-let.
How did you diversify the portfolio over that period of time? Like if you were buying in Glasgow, did you say it was
South Lanarkshire
and up in Aberdeen? Did you have a team around you or people that you rely on from through the network for sourcing, for project managing refurbs?
I've bought 1 or 2 deals through sourcers, but mostly just myself trawling through Rightmove, a couple of direct to vendors, just looking for distressed properties, putting letters through doors. I bought a couple off sourcers when it was during lockdown and it wasn't so easy to do viewings and it wasn't so easy to travel places and all those joyous days, remember?
So I think I want to ask you was, talk to us about the ethics of being a landlord, right? Because I know that reading your social media posts and Facebook and all that, you're quite a charitable person. You're involved, I think, with Mark Shanta's food bank and all that, aren't you? So you obviously do a lot of good stuff as well. And time again, I get bombarded with social media comments from, tenants and people that really sit far left and that, about how landlords are scum. All we do is just money grabbing, greedy. We're leeches, parasites. We just hoard houses out the society and all the rest of it. There's so much landlord hate out there.
Absolutely.
Do you ever think about that? And do you ever think about, Does that go through your head?
Yes,
and how
totally.
do you kind of live with those?
I don't admit to being a landlord. I think it's easier to say you're a property investor or you're a property developer or you work in commercial property. Like sometimes the connotations of being a landlord are horrible, and they get horrific press sometimes, especially at the moment, and especially in Scotland. I think when, without getting political about it, it's the government that have failed to provide good, 100%. Safe, affordable stock for tenants. And if it wasn't for private landlords, we'd be gubbed, frankly. I would like to think that most people that know me know I am a very values-led person, that I do really believe in, a fair society, and I really believe that, you don't choose what door you're born behind. You could be born a prince, you could be born a pauper. You don't, life's tough, and I'm involved in some organisations where I do see a lot of the other side of life. We have a very fortunate life, and I'm very grateful for that every day. I know an awful lot of people don't, and it's my real social conscience that I want to buy affordable. I'm not buying mansions and flipping them. I'm not, I want to provide good, safe, affordable homes for families that, they absolutely, it's a basic necessity to have a decent home, to
and be responsible and
absolutely
reactive.
And is it profitable? Yes, it is profitable, but no, I'm not out fleecing people by any means, and I'm charging market rates. Often some of my portfolio is well below market rates because of what's happened in the market. I was always very anti putting up people's rents, and I'm very, very grateful and appreciative of good, solid tenants, long-term tenants I've had. Want to provide them with, safe, affordable housing.
How's the government's interference and actions change your opinion towards putting up rents, or do you still remain that you just kind of keep them low if you have a good tenant in place? I
think that with what's happened in the market, and obviously, without getting political about it, I think it's backfired. And obviously we've seen what's happened to rents, especially Glasgow's one of the fastest growing rentals in the UK as well. So, if you obviously get a void and somebody moves out of a property that maybe they're paying $750 or something, and that's LHA rate anyway, then when it goes back on the market, it can be going back on the market for $900, $950. How's that fair for tenants? But the government have created that because of obviously the rental caps. It would make me think that the most sensible thing to do from a business point of view is to, raise rents annually by small increments, which would never have been my thoughts before. But I think that that's really what people will have to do now because of the rising costs and, associated costs with it, that it would only be the fair thing to do for landlords, not hikes in rental. Well, one, you can't do it anyway, but between tenancies, I guess you have to follow the market, and charge accordingly.
Yeah, I think, like you say, you can still be a good person and be a landlord.
Absolutely.
I think this idea, the generation, the living rent, the groups that are really kind of quite militant and they camp outside, letting agencies doors and all the rest of it. There's no kind of reasoning with these people. They'll just take a hard line approach. But if you're a responsible landlord that's providing a good service, we were never meant to be, as a private sector, an answer to the government failures in the social housing sector. Going back to the 1980s when Margaret Thatcher basically brought in the right to buy, where all the social housing stock started depleting. Yep. That can't be that can't be our fault. There was plenty of people who benefited from that. There were social tenants who bought their council houses, passed it on to the next generation.
Absolutely.
Who benefited from it. A lot of these people who are standing with these boards outside probably are these people. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. It can open up a bigger discussion, but moving on from that.
Yeah, who knows? There's definitely a casualty of that movement that exists now with the lack of stock.
I think it's becoming definitely, as obviously we are now, the housing crisis is becoming more and more of a political agenda. Landlords are becoming that target, in a political football. So we are, like you say, I would rather class myself as an investor at a dinner party rather than a landlord parasite leech.
I'm a business owner.
I dabble.
What's your business?
Maybe that's why more and more people are getting into commercial property as well.
Just don't go to the dinner party.
Yeah, avoid those ones.
Not that I go to any dinner parties, by the way, make myself sound fancy here. Moving on. So you've built up your buy-to-let portfolio. You still see legs in that and good long-term investment.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though that maybe the initial thoughts of you said about going out to your mum in Australia, you needed another additional revenue stream. Possibly that revenue streams in terms of cash flow is not going to be there anymore with your buy-to-let portfolio as some of your mortgage rates come up for renewal.
Touch wood, we're fine so far. We're relatively unaffected so far. Yeah. It will change as things. But we're very fortunate in that Kevin, my husband, and I both still work full times. We're both still salaried.
Yeah.
We just recycle the property money back into the business.
What does Kevin do again?
Kevin's a travel agent.
Right. Okay. That's right.
Yeah. So we are fortunate in that that's just, if you like, a side business, and the money just stays in the business and gets recycled in the business. So
I think that's the problem been the last 8-9 years, where mortgages have been, or interests have been so low, borrowing's been so cheap, cash flow's been phenomenally well on buy-to-lets, that people have seen as an opportunity to cash flow their lifestyle or quit their job and be full-time in property. But it was never ever...
It's been totally unrealistic where it's sat, and
it was only a period of time, and it's never been back to normal, if you speak, where you're making minimal cash flow, but you've got a good asset, a good investment that's going to go up over a long period of time, and you can pay down the debt. So it's back to almost what buy-to-let was set up to be.
It was meant to be. Yeah, I mean, when I think back, I'm obviously of an age, but when I think back, our first mortgage, I think, was 16%, and nobody blinked at that. That's just what it was. And they were throwing money at you, absolutely throwing money at you. My brother bought
They would have that percentage, wouldn't they?
You've what, sorry?
They would have 16%.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd throw money at people at 16%.
My brother, so what year would that be? Maybe 94, 93, bought a property, beautiful Victorian tenement property in a nice area, and I think he'd 110% mortgage because he got the full value of the property, and he said it needed a new kitchen, a new bathroom and whatever, which it did, and they gave him the money for that up front. He never got a new kitchen, new bathroom. It all went to tenants lager. But
I think I went to Ibiza in 2006 with my 110% mortgage. What was the value of that property then? Do you remember?
My first one?
No, that one you're talking about in like 1994 with a 16% mortgage rate. What was the kind of
value? Guessing somewhere around 40.
Right, so
that's the difference.
That's the big thing at the moment, isn't it? It's the interest rates, but it's also the high property prices then as well.
It's the affordability in terms of what wages are compared to house prices.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it was yourself I was listening to recently talking about that, and we were saying, the interest rates are comparable to where they were in the 90s, blah blah blah. But you're saying, but no, salaries versus house values are so way out now that. And so what if we become a generation of renters like Germany?
Exactly.
So what?
Who cares?
I agree. There should be no stigma.
To own your own house?
We need to get away from that. That's part of the issue in this country.
I was listening to that Diary of the CEO, and had the guy about the rich life on. Did you read that one? And it was talking about you don't buy your home, you don't need to, and it basically was putting everyone like, think about yourself as an investor. If it doesn't make sense to buy your home, rent your own home. Factor in all the costs your legals are buying, the tax you'll end up paying, the maintenance you'll spend of that property over the period of time. Factor all these numbers in, and if it doesn't make sense to do it from a financial decision rather than a society's telling us we should own. And it made such sense when you listen to them break it down. You're like,
should pay down. What is this whole panic to get your mortgage paid down?
When my 5-year fixed rate interest comes to when my 5-year fixed rate mortgage comes to an end in May 2024, I might be better off renting. Because
the only problem is, I think, with
my own home.
I don't know about in Glasgow. That you'd probably have a different market in place in Glasgow. But where I stay, you couldn't rent the houses that we want to live in. That's the problem. No one buys them to rent.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you could, I know your house, like, would someone buy a 400 grand house to rent out in your street?
No.
So you're not going to be able to rent the house that you want to live in.
There are a couple, exactly. I mean, there are a few. Like, we've got one, a 4-bed up in Clarkston, but it's very rare. Situation with that one is the father who lived in it went into a care home, so the family are keeping it, that sort of thing. It's usually passed down the generations, these type of homes, rather than people buying them for investments. Yeah. So again, this is another thing that I think that this has got to be a huge strategy for the government moving forward, is attracting massive big investment hedge funds, all the rest of it, pension money, and actually building proper big housing developments of 200 homes on the outskirts of the cities that are just built to rents for 3-4 bedroom family houses. I think it's got to be a strategy.
Yeah, I agree.
And it is unusual, as you say, to see a very high value home up for rental. There's one near us just now, and you're just like, who's going to spend that amount of money on rental? You know, like, I mean, I think the rental's going to be about 40 grand a year for rental only, and you think, seriously, who is that? Is it like a GP on placement covering a maternity, or is it somebody that's...
But what kind of value would the property be? That's, you know, the 40 grand a year rent. Would it be 600 grand?
700, something like that.
So if you were to buy it, you know, and pay stamp duty and ADS on 700 grand, plus your maintenance of a house like that, you might look at it and go, it's actually cheaper than rent, that at 40 grand a year. And I think that was the point of it. And it was like, when I broke it down, you kind of think about the numbers, you're like, do you know what? It's actually a really, really fair point.
Moving on then to obviously your kind of day to day, and so give us a bit of background about this big building then that we keep seeing popping up on social media, because I know you've got big plans for this as well.
I'm so delighted that you say I keep popping up on social media, because I think I'm really lax on social media.
Do you know what it is? It's other people making you pop up, maybe not yourself.
That's even better.
So people are obviously like thinking, wow, Noreen's got a great thing here. So like, we've brought you on here today.
It's a blessing and a curse, Nick. A blessing and a curse. So yes, it's a big old beast. It's a big old 100-year-old building, which is 4.5 acre site, gated site, with one big building which is about 160,000 square feet.
Wow.
Oof.
Jesus. So we've got 3 big...
what was that historically then?
It was historically the Coates Thread factory.
Right.
So all the Coates Thread was made in Paisley, the mills, is that what you call them? The mills in Paisley, and then brought over to this building in Kinning Park, which, if you can imagine, before the M8 was there, was pretty near the water. So that was like where they would then do all the logistics to get the thread onto the boats to ship it worldwide. So it's a really interesting building, actually. It's about 3/4 commercial industrial space, heavy industrial space, big warehouses,
like high eaves and crane space, or
like 5 metre,
right?
So big heavy duty industrial loading bays, mechanical loading bays and things like that. Big yard for Arctic lorries to turn, stuff like that. So we've just re-rented one. In fact, our very first tenant, who moved in 1990, literally just moved out last summer. We refurbed the unit and we've just relet it just now. So that's a 12,000 square foot warehouse.
Your dad bought this in around about 1990 then, was it?
Yes.
Oh right, sorry, I thought it was something you bought recently, right? Sorry.
No.
This is one
family.
Family business. And then we've got a 26,000 square foot warehouse next door that we've got people looking at just now, and then we're in a 50,000 square foot warehouse, and we also have a storage business within that. So we do secure archival storage, mostly for lawyers, solicitors, accountants, people that hold records.
When you say we, what do you mean by we're in the 50,000 square foot unit?
My storage company.
So you've got a storage company that you operate within, that's a tenant of the building in general?
Yes.
Okay, got you.
And do your storage company take up the 50,000 square foot?
We take up half of it.
Oh, some size.
I know.
That's phenomenal.
That's some size,
numbers, isn't it? Because, like, I'm looking at like trying to get an office space at the moment, and I'm looking at something.
What do you mean you're looking at trying to get an office space, Nick? Hello.
No, I'm trying to do the strategy where you buy it through the SaaS, and then you do the kind of multi-lets and all the rest of it. And I'm looking at something probably like about 3,000 square foot or something like that. When I hear, when I hear those numbers, I'm like, whoa! So that's massive.
You can get lost in these buildings.
Yes.
So
it's a good game of hide and seek.
Yeah.
So your day to day, for the last however many years, so you. Just tell us what you do, because you're managing the other tenants as well in the building?
Yes.
So you're the property manager?
Yeah. So we have a property management team and a property maintenance team based in the building. So we're on site to respond to any tenants, repairs and maintenance issues, stuff like that.
How many tenants is there on the whole site then?
About 20.
Wow. And ranging
from 115 square foot to 25,000 square foot, So,
and all types of businesses as well.
All types of businesses,
Is that part of your strategy when you find tenants? Then do you try and, I suppose, diversify the tenant demographics? That if one industry was hit, it wasn't like, oh shit, all the industry's gone.
Exactly.
It's all right.
So over the years, we've had call centres in there. We've had a council. We had NHS. We've got charities. We've had a day centre. We've got just now we've got an auction house. We've got what else? We've got trainer cleaning laundry. Right. Our funkiest tenant, Mr. Crep Cleanse, who, I know, whoever knew. Who knew? Just didn't know that kind of business would exist years ago, but here we are.
And obviously, it's been in the family a long time, but I don't know, I get the feeling, tell me if I'm wrong, but I get the feeling like you've kind of realised that there's more potential. Are you going to be developing the building at all to try and bring in more revenue and stuff like that? Do you have plans
absolutely.
for it?
I think traditionally, I think most of the commercial property market traditionally only looked at FRI, long-term leases. You get the tenant in, you sign up for 15 years, you walk away, you collect the rent every quarter, do the repairs and maintenance, and you don't really have much to do with it. Obviously, tenants who are looking for units of that size are not 10 a penny. They're not coming knocking your door every other day. So, you have to creatively look at, okay, so what leads are coming to me? If I'm continually getting leads for offices for 400 square feet, why am I not creating offices for 400
making
square
that
feet?
space,
So we have been like chunking up the building into different bits. Right. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's a lot of money involved in doing that. So we recently took one of our units, which was about 2,500 square feet, and split it up into a commercial multi-occupancy unit. Traditionally, it was on a set rental per annum of X amount per square foot, whatever. When we took it and broke it up into that, we installed fairly high-tech keyless security system that we operate via an app that we can allow people access, prevents people's access, whatever. 24-hour usage of the unit is all inclusive of all utilities, water, heat and light, shared facilities, shared kitchen, shared toilets, nice breakout areas. Refurbished it quite funky, it's a nice space, and then marketed it to small individual businesses, and it's been a bit of a winner. Right. Both in terms of the amount we can command per square foot compared to a traditional FRI lease, and also just in terms of more interesting, smaller businesses we're attracting.
Can you give us an example of what kind of tenant would take that sort of space?
So we have one tenant who is a recording studio. Right. So we have spent a bit of money with him. He's spent quite a lot of money, but we've spent a bit of money in making the place soundproof, acoustic plasterboard, acoustic glass. He's put down some super funky floor coverings that are...
It's an interesting way as well. Do you think that the commercial space is changing? That you kind of mentioned it before, that you would have a building and you would typically rent it to one tenant, whereas now it seems to me like you were saying that you kind of look at the need of the market and then you try and make the building suit the need of the market. So basically find a tenant first and then make the building suit. Is that more the strategy?
And there's a bit of a game playing there, that you're kind of like, when's it available? Oh, right, okay, that's what you need. Hold on, team, get working. So yes, it's a bit, you have to be responsive though, don't you, in any business?
It's interesting because I was appraising a deal in the last 2 weeks, and historically the building sold for 20 million because Royal Bank of Scotland were in it for £1.1 million on a 20-year lease. Their lease ran out 3 years ago. The building sat empty. So my offer was accepted at 550. You're like, holy shit, because the whole building's based on the income that can produce, and it's still not really a huge deal at that huge price reduction, but it's trying to then look at the need. Who needs 35,000 square foot of office space? The Royal Bank of Scotland, they don't need that anymore. They're working from home, they're smaller units. So the marketplace has changed. That building's not worth that, based on what that person paid for it for that return, obviously. But it's now trying to find the need for what that building would use. And it was downstairs, on the ground floor. The current owners submitting planning applications, for 11 industrial units. So the roller shutter doors, smaller units, and upstairs getting changed to class 11 for sports and leisure. So it was looking at what the desire was, or the demand was in the local area, and changed the building to suit that purpose. But it's really interesting that you're saying the same. Like, you're just going to find a tenant and then go, right, we'll make the building suit that purpose.
And like any business, that if you constantly get leads looking for, green flags, you're not going to sell red flags all day long. You've got to go, hold on a wee sec, maybe the punters actually want green flags, or...
So can you give us an idea then, obviously when you adopted that strategy of multiple occupation in that space that you talked about there, I mean, you don't need to give us the figures, but can you give us an idea of did you kind of 4 times the income, or what sort of scales are we talking about in terms of increased revenue?
definitely multiples, 3 times to 4 times income.
Wow, just from doing that. Obviously, there's that initial investment there to put in.
Yeah, so there's an upfront cost, obviously, of the tech is expensive, and you're thinking, like, do I need to spend this amount of money on keyless entry systems and stuff? You go, yes, you absolutely do, because all it takes is one rogue tenant to have access, and one phone call, and you can cut them off the app and stop them getting access or whatever. CCTV, so if you've got communal, we don't have CCTV in the individual areas, but in the communal areas and stuff like that, and you go, yeah, absolutely, you want to see what's going on, you want to see
keep an eye on your building, it's your responsibility.
Even just now, just the price of utilities and everything, you want to see who's leaving lights on, you want to see stuff like that. You want them to behave in a certain way and be courteous co-tenants of a space with each other. And
so you quite hands-on now compared to before. You would just kind of let the tenants get on with it and it was down to them, but have you got to be a lot more involved now? It was interesting. I saw a story from Darren Green, who we all know, Darren Gillian. Darren was saying, I'm down here in Ayrshire, I now need to go back to Irvine because the tenants of our commercial building have just called me to say there's no toilet roll in the toilet. Wow. So he's got to batter back there and find the toilet roll, or there was toilet roll, it just wasn't on the dispensers. So are you quite hands-on in terms of the day-to-day property manager, or have you got somebody else to do that sort of stuff?
We've got a team there, so we have a cleaner who goes in obviously and tops up all the supplies and does all that stuff in the common areas, and then we have CCTV, so we keep an eye on it, but somebody's probably in our commercial multi-occupancy probably once a day, just to have a walk around, check everything's okay. So
then there's costs involved in that as well. Exactly. You need staffing costs.
Exactly.
So see, from your original tenants that you had in place historically, what have you can you share numbers, I suppose, of where the value of the rental incomes went from, I don't know, 15 years ago when it was 1 or 2 big tenants to now having multiple tenants? Has the investment grown significantly more?
We've not had it revalued or anything recently, so I would imagine so, yes. And talking to Jerry Alexander, Jerry's got another plug.
Dan, you were trying to avoid that plug, weren't you?
Every week.
Hi Jerry, your fiver's in the post. In terms of the value of the building, yes, it would really depend on what method, obviously, teaching your grandma to suck eggs here, but what kind of valuation you're going to have done, whether it's going to be a bricks and mortar valuation, in which case obviously the income won't affect it too much, or whether it's going to be multiples of rental. I think the market has to change and has to listen to licenses figures as opposed to just traditional FRI lease figures, where generally you would value the building. No one seems
to be signing up to them for long term. You struggle to get the companies, don't you?
So generally you would have said, right, okay, the rental, the tenant's paying 50 grand, and that will maybe take a multiple of 8 or multiple of 10 or whatever, and will value your building accordingly. With a CMO, obviously your rental's including utilities, it's including cleaning, it's including water, it's including a bit of on-site management, all that kind of stuff. So yes, I think the market will have to respond and will have to create a valuation based on a higher square footage occupancy, square footage per occupancy for the value of the building. It's interesting. Yes, it obviously would always be your hope that whatever you're doing, attracting higher caliber tenants, trying to gain a higher per square foot rate for your building, that obviously the focus on all that is then to get a better valuation and realise a better value.
I'm so interested now. How much did your dad buy that building for back in 1990?
I don't actually know.
We need to check it. We need to go back and we need to go.
Noreen's dad needs to let us know.
We need to stalk you down to the building so we know the exact address. I mean, I'm sure we could find out.
What's the plan going forward then? Do you fancy buying more of these buildings and kind of continuing that foundation, I suppose, that your dad put in place 30 years ago?
Yes. Yeah. So this is obviously family owned. This isn't, mine.
Is there brothers and sisters involved in the business?
Yeah, I'm one of 5. I'm the middle of 5.
Right.
No, nobody else is involved in the business. No.
It's not.
You're the favourite, Noreen. Yeah,
the favourite. Yeah, I'm the favourite child. Yeah, that's me.
I hope your siblings listen to this.
Yeah, I'm the only one involved in that side of the business,
Right.
for my pleasure. What is the plan? Yes, the plan is obviously for my own portfolio to increase that both residentially and commercially.
Yeah.
And I think the CMO model is definitely the way to go at the moment. You know, both if you look at what's happened to properties and tenants and everything over the past few years, talking commercially as well, you know, COVID and lockdown was mental. I mean, who could ever have predicted that would have happened? Touch wood, we were actually very fortunate in that we didn't lose any tenants, but we still do have tenants that are occupying large footprints and basically have nobody back in the office. And you're kind of like, why are you not back in the office? Yeah. And what they've said is, we don't want to force people to come back into a workspace if they don't want to be in it. And you're like, well, why? Obviously, they're bound to a lease, so they're bound to continue to pay their rental and continue to be the tenants in that space. But you look and you go, if we didn't have different types of businesses and different types of tenants, we could have been really stung.
You'd
Can
be
you
exposed
imagine
to
if everyone we had
that,
was hospitality and they all went bust? Can you imagine if everyone we had was, you know, one of the industries, beauty, that was really badly affected, and we had 10 hairdressers and, you know, nobody was there and they had no income and they couldn't pay their rent. And so I think it's important to really diversify and really have a different mix of different types of businesses. And
the larger spaces that are in there that you know, that haven't brought the employees back into the workspace, when their lease is up, I'm assuming that's going to be, would you find a tenant that would take on a large space like that, or is it going to be a case of subdividing that further into smaller units?
Yeah, I think it would be always our focus now going forward to go smaller, unless we're approached by you know, companies that want the larger space, but it's more lucrative to go smaller anyway.
Yeah, to increase that square footage price. Yeah.
Bringing into the conversation Stephen's favourite word of pivoting. Pivot. So he said it on the last podcast. I think he said that about 10 times.
That's 3 episodes you've listened to.
So the reason why I'm talking about pivoting is because I speak to quite a lot of people who started off, you know, investing in residential, just buy to let and that. They're now saying, you know, about higher interest rates and all that they're looking at other strategies, whether that be, you know, serviced accommodation or commercial. Like I see a lot of people going on commercial courses and stuff like that, this multiple occupancy model. You're sitting in a prime position here with all this experience that you've dealt with commercial for so many years. Now this is like the kind of like the sexy strategy that everyone seems to want to get involved in. So, you know, how do you know, you're in the perfect position to now drive this forward into buying more buildings, potential growing that. Is that where you see yourself going? Have you started looking at other projects or anything like that?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm looking at a couple of units just now, which probably are just single use actually, just for small businesses to occupy themselves. But yeah, it definitely would be my intention to buy a new.
And how do you fund these? Are you
borrowings? So we have some capital ourselves,
right.
And then borrowings, development finance.
Borrowing from
institutions,
banks, like SAS funding, private.
So we've got SAS pensions set up as well, so we'll use our SAS going forward for that, and commercial borrowing.
Any types of building demographics that you'd look at, or is it just a case of figuring out what? I suppose you're in the position, like you said, Nick was saying, the fortunate position you can get the leads in to see what the demand is in a certain area. Would you just be looking to? Yeah,
so probably still within the Greater Glasgow area. Yeah, probably something about 10,000 square foot. I think it's a good footprint to start a CMO.
Well, commercial, when we talk about commercial, it's such a wide range. But, you know, like I think that there's definitely that demand, it looks like, from in terms of the smaller units and stuff like that. You know, if I look at myself, for example, as a letting agency business, you know, I'm looking at that. I'm at that growth now in the business where I've got a couple of staff and I need that office space. I'll come and see you.
Yes.
Here's
my card, Nick.
Potential tenant. But like you say, a lot more people working from home. But it's interesting to see the news there just yesterday, actually, down in England, that they're going through a mass. Well, this all ties into the elections are coming up and they've got to try and do something about this housing crisis. But they're talking about, you know, relaxing the planning laws, and down in England they've got the permitted development, so you can go, basically you don't need planning permission to go and take an empty shop or an office and just convert it into residential. So I really think they need to do something like that in Scotland. I don't know.
We've been talking about this for about 3 years though. I mean, I remember still being at an in-person course about 3 years ago and they were talking about that was going through and it was imminent and happening.
Well, they can do it in England, but in Scotland we just seem to be so backwards, too slow. Like you say, look at the city centres. I don't know if you've been into Glasgow city centre lately.
It's desolate.
It's terrible.
It's desolate.
They need to really revamp
so like
it.
all those gorgeous streets, you know, Bath Street, West George Street, St Vincent Street, all those gorgeous, traditionally residential tenements,
Yeah.
you know, should be back to
Townhouses.
residential. I mean,
Yeah.
they're gorgeous. And I know they've housed offices for years and years and years, you know, accountants, in fact my accountant's in one of them in Bath Street, accountants, surveyors, you know, but they don't need to. I mean, they absolutely should be resi. They're gorgeous big front lounges
That's
and
what it
bay
needs.
windows and beautiful, but then you've got the whole EPC nonsense, you know, what are we going to do with these high ceilings and big huge windows, and you know, are we going to fill them all in with
How's that affecting your big building down there with EPC and all that? Has there been? I mean, I'm not clued up on commercial EPCs, but have they got plans to have minimum requirements in commercial buildings as well? And
not so strictly yet. No, that's not really in the focus yet. It will be, of course, it will be. But, I mean, I don't know how you're supposed to get a strong EPC rating on a
tin shell.
Yeah, you know, a
That's used as
50,000 square foot warehouse with 5 metre ceilings and a glass roof, and you know,
that's going to be some amount of insulation. That's going to be some. That's going to be a big heat pump.
Who knows what'll happen there? But
what about, obviously, like, you know, touching the family life and all that, because obviously you've got 4 kids and that, and you know, where does the family come into this? Have you got any of your kids interested in property so far?
Yeah, I really have. So my daughter's not at home anymore. Happy birthday to my daughter today. My daughter's not at home anymore, but my 3 sons are at home, and they've all been through college and uni and stuff. So 2 of them are still at uni. One of them's finished. He's actually doing it. Oh no, he's not finished. I'm talking rubbish. He's doing an apprenticeship in joinery, so that's very handy for me to have in the house.
Cheap labour.
Yeah, cheap labour. I don't know if it'll be cheap. The boys get good taste.
£250 a day.
And my other
all our kids. You be a joiner.
I need a plumber now and an electrician. No, I have encouraged them to take their full SAS entitlement and not to spend it. So they actually angeled us money over the past couple of years for deposits for properties and stuff like that. So they all have deposits sitting ready to buy their first buy-to-let. So we want to get them on the ladder. And
so we touched on that a minute ago there about the kind of nation renters. Chuck it back to your kids then. If your kids are sitting there at a deposit, do you encourage them to buy their own home to live in, or do you encourage them to buy their own investment first?
No, buy-to-let first.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting, because I mean,
you know, if you can generate,
you
know, 200, 250 quid a month cash flow, there's, you know, even if you only do it at that level, then in 2 years there's another deposit for your next.
That's interesting, and that ties back to that podcast that you just listened to, which I listened to when I was doing my 65 lengths the other day in the pool, the Diary of the CEO. Yeah, that was a really good one. They did a compound interest calculator. If you started at the age of 16 and you put in, what was it? I mean, it was a number that a 16-year-old I don't think would be able to reach.
Yeah, it was a few hundred, maybe 400 quid. It was maybe.
But it showed you by the time they got to the age of 65, what that compounding on a 7% annual interest rate was, and it was something
12 million.
No, it was more than that. I think it was about
Seriously?
It was 12 million. I'm sure it was 17 million when they put it to 8%. Like, it was ridiculous.
So if you start putting that, and again, you know, you're like that, you're thinking, I'm now, 40, coming up for 45, I'm like, shit, 20 years I've missed that. Just putting that little bit away each month, and, but I guess it's never too late.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
You're investing and you're creating
wealth. And it's trying to get that into your kids as well. Yeah. And obviously you've got them off to a good start by, advising them, getting that money into the, did you say the SAS? So there's obviously tax benefits.
So most students just borrow their entire student, so SAS is student loan,
right, okay, right. So I'm thinking you were doing some creative.
SAS pensions,
no, I'm thinking you were doing some creative thing where you got your family's trustees. Right, okay. Okay. So tell me about this strategy then. What's this?
It's not really a strategy. I'm probably just
borrowing the money,
scamming the system a bit. So most students just take their full student loan allowance. They get their fees paid, obviously, in Scotland, and then take their allowance that they get, which is, I can't remember what it is, like £8,000 a year or something, and take it and spend it all in the pub, or spend it on
tenants, like your brother did.
Shane, yes, exactly. But tenants lager, quite a lot of that spent in our house right now. But I've encouraged them to take their SAS and to bank it and to build it up into a deposit for their first buy-to-let.
Because they can pay that.
Invest in you.
So they're investing it, but they've invested it with me short term.
10%.
Well, not quite 10. Must you?
That's, do you know what that is?
No, I did pay them interest for the angel investment, yeah.
Now that you say that, going back to a previous guest that we had on, Ewan Dudding, that's how he, young guy, Ewan Dudding, I don't know if you've come across him before. That's how he started off buy to let, was with the student loans.
It's the cheapest borrowing ever, and
Exactly.
you don't have to pay it back till you start making a certain salary at a certain
sort of
age.
25 or 30 grand a year salary, you start paying it before tax as well, don't you? Yeah.
So it really makes sense. How else are you going to save up a deposit for a property these days?
And can you get that student loan every year? Oh, can you?
While you're a student.
I don't want to go to university.
So it's
£8,000 a year student loan.
That's definitely interesting.
That
So
sounds really good.
again, it's like having somebody like yourself clued up in that sort of stuff. Your kids will benefit from that in the long run, for sure, rather than looking back at it. It's like a wee bit like when I started out. I got £5,000 when my gran died. She gave me £5,000 in inheritance, and I was like most young people, I would have just gone and just blown it straight away. But my mum was like, property prices were that cheap back then, right? So it was like, I bought a 40 grand flat in Inverness, in the city centre, town centre of Inverness. That was my deposit, the £5,000.
Wow.
And that went up. That's what gave me a start. It went up from 40 grand to, I sold it 4 years later. And again, this was just timing, perfect timing. I sold it 4 years later for £107,000.
God.
We should look back at that property and see what that's worth now, because Inverness is booming now because it's right at the peak, the start and then the SE500.
Gold Court in Inverness. Absolutely unbelievable. So that again, that was,
wasn't it? What age were you, Nick?
so that was 2001, 21.
Wow.
Sold it in 2005, I think. So that time, that was boom time property.
Time. Crazy time. Yeah.
So and Inverness as well, that was just gathering momentum too. People were moving in there. So great advice from
Noreen there on student loans
and
how to fleece your kids.
a wee bit of a strategy there that we could definitely teach our kids.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. See, you always learn something new on this podcast.
Also, the good thing about running a business as well, from a business owner's point of view too, is you can get your kids involved as well. A wee bit of work as well, a bit of part-time work. Are your kids adapting any roles within the business? Or?
No, not just now. No, one of my sons, as I said, is doing an apprentice in joinery, so he is working for the maintenance team that we use on site. So that's been good for him. So he definitely sees the nuts and bolts of the business, but not from my perspective, which is even better.
I'm trying to get my son out doing some like social media content, filming and all that, but he's only 11, so he's like, Dad, I'm not going to go out with you in the street and start doing videos. That's embarrassing. Like. So
we have to wait a few years for that.
But you just go, you're actually brilliant and all that stuff. I keep asking one of my sons who's studying computing, please going to show me, how do you add a photo to your Instagram? How do you do this? And he's like, you're so stupid. I mean, I'm like, right, okay, I just didn't grow up with all this tech. I don't know how to. But on the other hand, what you say to your kids is, look, I taught you to use a spoon, mate, right?
I taught you to wipe your own ass.
Exactly.
Get here and do this for me.
Don't laugh at me because I can't work Instagram.
Are they all still living at home?
My 3 boys are,
Cool. So what's the future? I mean, you've already touched on obviously expand the commercial and stuff like that. What's your goals? Like, do you have goals? Do you write down goals? Like, do you have a vision?
I do. I'm a kind of recent convert to this. I was always a bit scared to put stuff on paper and things, but no, I absolutely do now. I've started about 2 years ago.
Good.
So I set myself kind of annual goals, monthly goals, weekly goals, and try to, really, have a kind of chat with myself every Sunday night, but where have I got to, what have I done, what have I not done, but why have I not done it? And maybe it just either wasn't important, why is it even on the list, get somebody else to do it, or because bigger things happened and that fell by the wayside. And I'm a bit of a nightmare when it comes to delegating things, and that's really my challenge for this year, is to try and make myself freer and delegate things and hand over with confidence. And
so how does the ideal life look like to you now? What's
your rich life? You've been listening to that podcast.
Your rich life. You're kind of, you're still pretty young just now, Noreen.
Until tomorrow, I have a milestone birthday
tomorrow. When you're 65, do you still see yourself, dealing with commercial property tenants and stuff like that? Like,
not on the front line, I hope.
Day to day.
I mean, I hope that I'll always be productive. I hope I'll always be busy. I just don't do doing nothing. It's not in my nature. I'm quite a busy person, got a lot of energy. I love doing a lot for charity. I love doing a lot of volunteering. I love spending time with my family. I love socialising with my pals.
Some more of that.
Some more of that, yeah. But with the work thing, yeah, hopefully I'll always have my hand in something and to do with property and generating an income, but also feeling needed and feeling useful and doing things. My dad's a fantastic example. I lost my mum about 11 years ago and she was fabulous, but my dad's a terrific example. My dad's 83.
Is he still involved, your dad?
Wee bits and bobs, yeah, wee bits and bobs. I mean, you have to pick Dad, you can't bugger off to Australia for 6 months.
83?
Wow. So he took himself off to Australia in September, didn't come back till March because my brother lives over there.
That's amazing.
And had a ball, and then he came back and he was kind of like, right, do you need me? Do you need me tomorrow? And I'm like, no. But he's very productive, he's good, he's great, he golfs kind of 5 days a week in the summer. He was scuba diving until lockdown. So he's a really admirable guy. He's got a fabulous work ethic.
How do you think that's affected how has that had an impact on you then? Your dad's looking at what he's done throughout his life, is that really giving you that drive?
Yeah, absolutely. My dad lost his mum 8 years old and had a really difficult childhood and was, cut a long story short, but got awarded a scholarship to go to any school in Ireland, went to this Christian Brothers school near his house so that he could come home and help with the family at weekends, and the brothers and people basically starved the kids to death. It was like a scene from Oliver Twist, and him and I think 13 other boys used to break into the kitchens at night and steal bread and cheese because they were literally starving, and they all get caught stealing and they got expelled from school, but they got expelled from Ireland, and he came over here as a 14-year-old on his own and had to build a life. So he's an incredible, amazing, resilient,
there's resilience for
tough
you, yeah.
guy, and he's done very well for himself. He's had a big family. He's got 5 children. He feeds the masses and helps the millions. He's got fantastic charities worldwide, and he's done brilliant things, my dad. So he's been an incredible example, as has my mum.
He sounds like a great guy.
Yeah, he's amazing actually.
Can we get him on the podcast?
Yeah, he sounds good.
You can get him.
Get him on.
He's got plenty of time. Tell him
as long as you've got a good editing suite.
Tell us how much he bought his building for in 1990.
Tell him to take a day off the golf next month.
That's like you say, it does shape you as a human, like these influences on your life and all that, and obviously a hard worker to get to that point as well.
And like that whole thing, Nick, Steve's famous word pivot, responded to the markets, used to be in office furniture, became a manufacturer when suppliers were letting them down right, left and centre, and he was like, right, how can I actually take this under my own control? Right, okay, I'm going to go into a joint venture in a factory in Malaysia, a factory in China, so interesting guy. And
that was when you put it into context like that, I mean, talk about taking risks and entrepreneurial and all the rest of it, that was back before we had all the internet and we could just jump on a Zoom call and stuff like that. So the logistics and the process of trying to set something up like that is a major task.
Having the foresight and the knowledge, like information so readily available to us, but back then it wouldn't have been.
Now you can jump on Alibaba and all that, and you can strike a deal with China and easily, but back then to do that sort of business, that's really impressive. I will need to try and meet your dad sometime. Get him along to a Glasgow networking event.
I tried to bloody bring him to the night I was talking at your do, but it's something on. So.
Brilliant. Good stuff.
Thanks very much for joining us, Noreen. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Lovely chat, Noreen. Brilliant. All the best to you.
Thank you.